On our wedding night, I was still in my wedding dress, the lace trailing across the plush carpet of our honeymoon suite, when the door slammed open so hard it rattled the paintings on the wall. My mother-in-law, furious, stormed in like she owned the place. "You need to sleep in separate rooms," she shrieked, eyes wild, face red. For a second, I thought it was a joke. I actually laughed. It was my wedding night, after all. But the way she stood there gripping the doorframe like she was about to physically rip me away from her son made it very clear she was dead serious. My husband, Alex, just sighed like he'd been expecting this. Then, with the calmest expression, he said, "Actually, I have a better idea." Right there in front of me, he reached into his suit pocket, pulled out a thick envelope, and handed it to her. Her face dropped. She snatched it, opened it, and as she read, her whole body froze. Alex and I had been together for 4 years before getting married. I knew his mom, Helen, was difficult. She had a habit of showing up unannounced, inserting herself into our plans, and making every situation about her. If we took a trip, she'd cry about being left out. If Alex got me a gift, she'd complain that he never put that much thought into hers. I never imagined she'd go this far. During wedding planning, things got worse. She hated everything I chose. The venue was too modern, my dress was too plain, the food was disrespectful to her taste. She even called the florist behind my back and tried to change my bouquet to her favorite flowers. But Alex always had my back. He told her over and over, "Mom, this is our wedding, not yours." She'd back off temporarily, but I should have known she was waiting for her moment. The wedding itself was a disaster because of her. Right before I walked down the aisle, one of my bridesmaids rushed up, panic all over her face. "Your dress, something's wrong with it." I looked down. My stomach dropped. There were dark stains on the bottom. Someone had spilled coffee all over the hem of my wedding dress, except there was no coffee anywhere nearby. Later, I found out from my maid of honor that Helen had been in the room alone with my dress for about 10 minutes before I put it on. But that was just the start. During the ceremony, she loudly sighed every time Alex and I exchanged vows. When the officiant asked if anyone objected, she stood up. "I just think they should take some time to really think about this," she said, as if we hadn't been together for years. Alex shut it down immediately. "Sit down, Mom." She did, but not before glaring at me like I had personally ruined her life. At the reception, she found a way to steal the spotlight at every turn. She grabbed the mic during speeches to give an unplanned toast that was mostly about herself. She complained loudly about the music. At one point, she even took off her heels and sat in the middle of the dance floor, refusing to move because she was tired and it was too loud. It was exhausting, but I thought, at least we're married now. At least it's over. I was so wrong. Fast forward to our honeymoon suite. Alex and I had just arrived, still riding the high of the night. The hotel had sent up champagne, and we were finally alone until that door burst open. Now she was standing there, trying to separate us on our wedding night. That's when Alex pulled out the envelope. As she read the papers inside, her expression shifted from rage to pure panic. In her hands were legal documents, and that's when it all started to unravel. Her hands trembled as she held the papers. The color drained from her face. For the first time that night, she was completely silent. I didn't know what was in that envelope yet, but I knew one thing: whatever Alex had just handed her was big. Helen's mouth opened, then shut. She looked up at Alex, her expression a mix of anger and desperation. "You wouldn't." Alex leaned back against the dresser, arms crossed. "I already did." A month before the wedding, Helen had pulled one last stunt. She had called Alex's job, his actual boss, and told them he was thinking about quitting. Not just that. She told them he was emotionally unstable and needed a break. She lied to his employer to sabotage his career because she thought if he lost his job, he'd be forced to move back home with her. It backfired. His boss called him directly, confused, and Alex immediately knew it was her. That was the final straw. He went no contact. He didn't tell her. He just cut her off. She must have realized she had pushed too far because the next week, she called me crying, begging me to convince him to talk to her. I refused. So she retaliated, the wedding sabotage, the dress, the public humiliation, and now breaking into our honeymoon suite to demand we sleep in separate rooms like we were kids at summer camp. But Alex had planned ahead. Back in the hotel room, Helen held the papers like they burned her hands. "This is insane," she whispered. I stepped closer, finally getting a look. A restraining order. Against her. I blinked. "Wait, what?" "You can't be serious," she choked out. "I'm your mother." Alex's voice was calm. "And you have done nothing but try to control me, sabotage my relationship, and ruin my life for years. You ignored every boundary." Helen's face crumpled. She looked at me, then back at Alex. "You don't mean this." But Alex didn't waver. "I do." For the first time, she had no more words. She turned, stormed out just as dramatically as she had entered. The door slammed behind her. Silence filled the room. Then Alex exhaled, looking at me. "Well, that's done." I stared at him, still processing. "You got a restraining order?" He shrugged. "I figured we'd need it." And just like that, the weight of the night lifted. We were finally alone. Finally free. Alex picked up the champagne, popped the cork, and poured 2 glasses. He handed me one, smiling. "To us." I clinked my glass against his, a grin breaking across my face. "To us." I set things in motion, and now the law would take care of the rest. She looked at me, eyes filled with accusation. "You did this," she said. I raised my eyebrows. "Nope. This was all Alex." And it was. I had no idea he had gone to a lawyer after the work incident, but apparently he had been prepared. He had kept receipts, every text, every email, every unwanted visit. The dress sabotage had just been the cherry on top. The judge had signed an emergency order the day before the wedding. Helen just didn't know it yet. I sat up, an uneasy feeling creeping up my spine. "No," he said, rolling out of bed, throwing on a shirt, and opening the door, only to be met by hotel security. 2 guards stood there along with the hotel manager, who did not look happy. "Sir, we need to speak with you and your wife," the manager said. I threw on a robe and rushed to the door, my heart pounding. "What's going on?" The manager's eyes darted between us. "I need to ask, did you threaten your mother last night?" I almost laughed. "What?" The guard's face remained serious. "Your mother called the front desk at 3 a.m., claiming she was fearing for her life. She told us she fled your room after you became aggressive." Alex's jaw tightened. "You've got to be kidding me." "She said you were holding her against her while in your honeymoon suite." My stomach dropped. That's when I noticed something. One of the guards was holding a set of keys, room keys. They had been prepared to enter our room if we hadn't opened the door. "She told us she left her belongings inside," the manager continued. "She insisted she needed a way back in." I felt sick. Helen had tried to get security to open our room in the middle of the night. She was trying to frame Alex for something. Alex ran a hand down his face. "Let me guess, she's not here anymore?" The manager hesitated. "She checked out early this morning." Of course, she did. Cause damage, then run. Classic. Alex took a slow breath. "Did she give you anything?" "Proof." The manager shifted uncomfortably. She was very emotional. She had scratches on her arms. She did that to herself, I cut in immediately. Or she fell or something. Alex never laid a hand on her. The manager held up his hands. I'm not accusing anyone, but we do have to take accusations like this seriously. Alex pulled out his phone. I have a restraining order against her. Signed yesterday. Do you want to see it? The manager's face changed in an instant. We left the hotel that afternoon, but the moment we landed back home, our phones blew up, missed calls, hundreds of messages, and one voicemail from a police officer. Mr. and Mrs. Carter, this is Officer Martinez with the City Police Department. We received a complaint from a Helen Carter stating she was the victim of domestic abuse at the hotel last night. We need you to come in for a statement. I nearly dropped my phone. Helen had called the police. False allegations. The next few hours were a blur of panic, phone calls, and scrambling for evidence. Alex's lawyer, who had already been involved for months because of Helen, stepped in immediately. The security footage from the hotel showed Helen entering our room uninvited and then leaving, perfectly fine. No distress, no running, no fear for her life. The restraining order showed she had already been legally ordered to stay away. When we finally went to the police station, Alex's lawyer laid it all out. The officer remained professional, but I could tell he knew Helen was lying. She had no proof, just drama. In the end, they didn't press charges, but they did file a report. And that report? It came back to bite her. We went no contact again, fully, this time. Blocked her, changed locks, told family what happened. But Helen still wasn't done. She had one more trick up her sleeve. A month later, Alex got a call from his bank. Mr. Carter, we have a flagged transaction attempt on your joint savings account. I watched his face go white. We didn't have a joint savings account. But guess who did? Helen. Years ago, when Alex first got a job in college, his mother had helped him open his first bank account. And somehow, she had never taken her name off of it. She had tried to withdraw $10,000 from our honeymoon fund. Alex had forgotten the account even existed. He never used it. But Helen, she had been waiting. Waiting for a moment when she thought she could screw us over one last time. But this time, she left a paper trail. And Alex? He was done. Helen had officially ruined herself. The moment she tried to steal our money, it was game over. The bank flagged the transaction as fraud. And because of her previous false police report, it was treated as part of a larger pattern. But the best part? She had signed the withdrawal slip in person. When the bank called the authorities, there was zero doubt she had tried to steal from Alex. And this time, she couldn't play the victim. Her life fell apart within weeks. Helen went from playing the poor, abandoned mother to being completely exposed as a liar and a fraud. Her bank accounts? Frozen. Her reputation? Destroyed. Family that once defended her wanted nothing to do with her. Even her friends turned their backs when they realized she had been willing to call the cops on her own son over a lie. And then came the final blow. Once the fraud case was filed, Alex's lawyer suggested we dig deeper. So we did. Turns out Helen had a lot of skeletons in her closet. Unpaid debts she had been dodging for years. Credit card fraud, she had taken out a card under Alex's name when he was in college. He never knew. Government benefits fraud, she had falsely claimed financial hardship while still getting money from various family members. The fraud investigation brought all of it to light. And guess what? She ended up owing tens of thousands in fines and penalties. Then came the icing on the cake, the day we found out she had lost her house. Alex and I celebrated. Not because we were cruel, but because for years she had manipulated, controlled, and hurt the people around her. And now? She had no one left to manipulate. 1 year later, we were sitting in our beautiful new home, far away from Helen's drama, when we got a letter. It was from Helen. She had nothing left. No home. No friends. No money. She begged Alex to forgive her. She said she had learned her lesson and just wanted to be part of our lives again. Alex read the letter. Then he tossed it in the trash without saying a word. I smiled. We had won. Not by fighting. Not by screaming. But by letting Helen destroy herself. And the best part? We took that honeymoon fund, the same one Helen tried to steal, and booked the most luxurious trip of our lives. This time, Helen was nowhere in sight.